Welcome everyone, my name is Fist Truck. Let's get the whole special announcement thing out of the way first. Recently passed 1K subs, hell yeah, big wiener energy, love that shit. More importantly, what I'll be doing for it is a very typical 1K sub Q&A special. Yesterday I put up a poll asking whether or not people would prefer this be a live stream or a video. I was leaning towards video, and from what it looks like, the vast majority of people are also feeling the same way. So next Tuesday, 1 week from today's video, I'll be uploading the Q&A video. So in this video, the community post I make today, and Friday's video, please feel free to leave any questions you want, and I'll answer them in the Q&A video. As long as not something that's pertaining to the video itself. For example, today's video is going to be about Thymesia. If somebody asks a question about Thymesia, probably just going to answer it in the comments, but pretty much anything else, that's going to be in the Q&A video. So if you want to ask literally anything, I'll do my best to answer all of them. I'm not really expecting much, so I assume that I'll be able to get around to all of them, no problem. Though if it's any topics that are a little touchy and I would rather not answer, I will acknowledge your question's existence and then acknowledge that I'm not going to answer. Now, on to the video. So about a week ago, I put a poll up on the channel asking whether or not people would be interested in seeing a Thymesia video on this channel. So for those who don't know, Thymesia is a Souls-like that was developed by Overborder Studio, an indie team. Recently came out, seems to be the hot topic, so fuck it, why not make a video about it? Now in the poll, I said the video is probably going to be a first impression, but lo and behold, I beat it way quicker than I thought I would, so this is a review, but not really a review. I just say not a review because the game is either $25 or $30 depending on what platform you buy it on. When it comes to dollar amounts, everybody feels different about money. 25 or 30 bucks could be nothing to somebody who makes a lot of money, but on the flip side, if you're some teenager who has to ask their parents for money, that's literally everything. And I remember when I was a kid, every single game I asked for my parents had to be fucking good because I wasn't going to get another one for a while. So, long story short, it took me about 7 or 8 hours to do all the content in the game. And for the most part, the combat's really fucking good, so I had a fun time doing it. So without further ado, once again, my name is Fist Truck, and let's get into this not a review of Thymesia. Lastly, a preface for all the bozos who might hear my criticisms and immediately go, oh well, it's an indie studio, what can they do? Listen, I don't give a shit. There are some things they do in this game that are really fucking good and other things that are absolute shit. So they could have simply just not done the things that are shit. Just saying. Just as much as they were very capable of doing things they were incredibly good at. Lastly, subscribe please. Insert comment about the percentage of people that don't subscribe but watch the videos. Not really gonna get into it here, but it's a thing. Alright, so first I'm gonna start off with the bad shit before I get into the good shit. Bad shit number 1, the level design is absolute butt water. Pretty much all the areas are just filled with 90-degree hallways, they're maze-like, and more importantly, they straight up just don't feel natural. Think of areas like Stormvale Castle or the capital city in Elden Ring, where there are often multiple ways to get to the same point, and aren't just filled up the ass with a bunch of dead ends. Speaking of dead ends, the exploration in this game fucking sucks. The rewards for exploring off the beaten path are mostly just sheets of paper that give you lore, and I'm just gonna say it right now, I could give a shit about that. Nonetheless, most of the time you go through these areas, a lot of things just look the same. There are rarely any landmarks that allow you to reorient yourself in any particular zone. Moving on to the story, I'm just gonna say it right now, I could care less about it though, that's just me. I really don't play these games for the lore, the story, anything like that, so take what I'm gonna say with a grain of salt for the most part. The game doesn't have any voice acting, which is perfectly fine, but in this game it just straight up feels awkward. And what little interactions you have with NPCs or bosses, you just stand there and the text just appears at the bottom of the screen while they just look at you in silence, and it's really fucking awkward. Not to mention that when you're in the middle of fighting a boss, at certain points throughout the boss fight, just like the way it is in some of the FromSoft games, they'll talk in the middle of the fight, but since there's no voice acting, you randomly just see text appear at the bottom of the screen while you're fighting for your goddamn life. Like, am I seriously gonna take my eyes off the boss just to read whatever stupid shit they're saying right now?
Yeah, that makes sense.
I don't think so. I really feel like I should have taken the Hollow Knight approach. Bosses are silent. When you go to speak to an NPC, they're just like, at the beginning, and that's it, and then it's just text on the screen. Those very few interactions in Hollow Knight give those characters way more personality than anything even comes close to having in this game. Not to mention that from what it looks like, they're telling 99% of their story through sheets of paper on the floor. Fuck that shit, I'm not doing that. Speaking of shit, let's talk about the technical things in this game. I play this on the PS5, so just keep that in mind when I say the things that I'm about to say. This game has typical indie jank, which I'm totally okay with. Some weird animations here and there, like his walking cycle, really doesn't quite match with the amount of distance he covers while walking. There's something that I kind of noticed immediately when starting the game. Aside from that, when you're fighting enemies, you frequently push them up against the wall, so when you go to execute them, they just clip through the wall and you're just fighting a wall at that point. But that stuff is perfectly fine and a little bit funny. Also, some of the game's larger bosses have some very janky animations, also funny, and I really didn't give a shit when I was playing the game. Things that I did give a shit about, however, the game would just randomly hitch up and freeze for like 5 or 6 seconds at a time, and sometimes this would happen multiple times a minute. So I would just have to restart the game, and when I'd start it up, I go to the same spots where it was happening and things were perfectly fine. I don't get it. It just happened. Hopefully that gets patched out soon. And then a funny thing slash kind of sad and disappointing thing was that during the last boss fight, the music bugged out really fucking hard. Keep in mind that the video you're about to watch does not reflect the audio you are about to hear because I don't want to spoil the last boss. Alright, now I'm sure you were able to tell what was wrong with that. Now to me, it sounded like the lady who was doing the vocals for this song really wasn't happy with any of her takes, or she had the really old school draconian instructor type person that was smacking her in the back of the head every time she fucked up a take going, "No, do it again."
In 4, damn it, look at me. 1, 2.
Nonetheless, one of my friends was watching me play the game when this happened and it was hilarious, but also makes what should be a climactic moment feel like an absolute joke. Also, regarding this particular bug, I would have the music turned down to 0%, and guess what? It would still happen. Last bad thing I would speak about is replay value. This shit doesn't exist. There's no New Game Plus, and restarting new playthroughs is probably gonna feel samey, since by the time you get far enough to experiment with a new build, you're already pretty much at the end of a game. Also, the game allows you to replay through any mission at any point. Granted, you'll just shit stomp the early stuff, and you can also freely respec, so if you just want to try new builds out, I guess that's some way you could do it, but it's just not very enticing for more than 30 minutes for me. Unless you're really the type of person who gets into speedrunning this kind of stuff, since the game isn't very long, I don't really see replay value being all that much, and I really don't care to play this more than once. Alright, now I'm done bitching, time to get onto the good shit about the game. First, we're gonna start with the visuals. While the level design is straight up ass, at least each zone is aesthetically pleasing for the most part. Each zone is unique, but the style at least remains consistent, except for the third zone, which feels mad fucking generic and uninspired. The first zone, however, really slaps. It's like some sort of sickly circus kind of thing. And then on top of that, the music in the game is pretty good, so in that zone in particular, it reminded me of the best parts of Fable's soundtrack. As opposed to having one big connected world, this game really has a mission structure from the Neo games. You go through a zone once, fight a boss, then afterwards there are side missions that take place in the same exact zone. Often these have you going through the zones in reverse, or something cool that this game does is have you go through other parts of the zone that were once unexplorable on your first run through. Even cooler than that though is how some of these side missions have completely unique bosses. Like in one of the side missions, there's some set dressing with this big motherfucker in the background. I was like, oh, that looks really cool. Little did I know that the next side mission, that thing was the boss. However, it was an incredibly shitty boss fight because for some reason, out of all the things they had to rip off from the FromSoft games, they felt like ripping off one of the worst bosses from Dark Souls 3. When you get there, you'll know. Speaking about bosses, pretty much most of them are enjoyable. However, on the flip side, most of them are just a person with a weapon. And to add to that, the first boss is really the only one I had a hard time with or found challenging. And I mean the first boss that you actually have to beat, not the first guy that just smacks you in the beginning of the game. The first actual boss took me like 45 minutes, and then the rest of them got GG'd within about 2 or 3 tries at most. I'm gonna chalk this up to first, I'm just learning how to play the game. Second, you really don't have many skills by the time you're getting to the first boss, so you have less crutches to rely on at that point. But with all that being said, the bosses are still for the most part pretty fun, and aside from one really big stinker boss, I didn't really think any of them were just straight up bad. Lastly, getting on to the best thing of this game, the combat. Easily carries the entire experience. As I said in the beginning of the video, it's like Sekiro, but not as tight. You know how in Sekiro, when you slightly miss the block, at least you still block the damage, but your posture gets filled up by a shit ton? This game, it's all or nothing. If you don't get the timing right, you just take the full damage, which is kind of fucking annoying. However, unlike Sekiro, I constantly use my entire kit. Speaking from personal experience, but when I played through Sekiro, I honestly could give a shit about the prosthetic tools aside from the handful of times where I feel I was forced to use them, like the guys with the wooden shields as an example. But in this game, your R1 and R2 are both equally important, and then the special weapons that they give you do a shit ton of damage, and then your R2 feeds into the meter that allows you to keep reusing your special weapons. Pretty much everything is incredibly harmonious, and I loved every second of it. To add on to that, the game has a talent system, which is pretty good, and they allow you to respec at any time, which I absolutely love, because if you pick a talent point and you kind of regret it or really don't like it, you can just immediately change it. Or if you find that a certain talent isn't working for the situation that you're currently in, you can just go back to this game's equivalent of a bonfire, swap it out, and then hopefully do better the next time. Most importantly, I really found it easy to get into a flow state where I was just going from combat encounter to combat encounter, smacking dudes up, or maybe getting smacked up myself. It was really fucking fun, and is the reason why I found myself beating this game as quickly as I did, because I just kind of got hooked on it. Also, I had to play it for this video, so I was trying to get through it pretty quickly. But that's besides the point. Here's the big takeaway from this video. The combat is more than fun enough that I spent most of my playthrough enjoying the game, which, at the end of the day, is the most important thing, right? Because having fun is the most important thing when you're playing a game. However, I'm not really convinced that this game needed to be a Souls-like. This really should have just been a linear type game. Think of your Bayonettas or your Devil May Cries. If it was something more like that, this would have been a way more focused and consistent experience. It would have cut out a shit ton of the monotonous level design, the need to backtrack in side missions, streamlined the lore and story that's somehow being told through reams and reams of fucking paper, and most importantly, just focus on getting from one combat encounter to the next. Lastly, just having something as simple as a difficulty select screen seriously would have greatly upped the replay value in this game, at least for me. If you made it this far, thank you so much for watching the video. Yet again, kind of a new thing for the channel, sort of review, but not really. More importantly, I really want to start highlighting other games, different games I think you should check out. Games maybe that I don't like, that other people really do like. You know, hot takes always get the conversation started and whatnot. Aside from that, once again, don't forget to leave a question in the comments in here, or the community post, or this coming Friday's video, so I can answer them in next Tuesday's Q&A video. Lastly, once again, thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Dislike it if you disliked it, all that kind of good shit. And until next time, don't forget to wipe before you shit.